Hey everybody, CO, and welcome to Comics and Dragons. I'm Lance Whiteeagle, and today we're going to be talking about one of my very favorite TV shows growing up from the 1980s. You probably guessed it by the title, but it is Bravestarr. I am still getting used to my camera. Bravestarr was meant to be the successor to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It lasted one season from 1987 to early 1988. That season consisted of 65 episodes, and they actually did, as I just held up, a feature-length movie, which was at one point meant to have a theater release across the country, but it never quite got there. Bravestarr also featured a action figure line, which was kind of larger and more articulate than the He-Man figures. So Bravestarr featured a pretty interesting cast of characters. The lead character, Marshall Bravestarr, was a native person who is basically a space cowboy, a space sheriff. Bravestarr can call upon aspects of certain animals to enhance his abilities, making him a superhero for the most part. He can call on the eyes of the hawk, which gives him an ability to see kind of out of what he is physically able to. It's a power that functions very similar to the sight beyond sight from the Thundercats. He can also use ears of the wolf, which gives him enhanced hearing. This is probably the least used power in the show. I think it may be one of those things that the writers thought sounded really cool when they were developing the character, but then when it came time to write the episodes, found very little use for it. He also can call on the speed of the puma, which gives him enhanced speed, and it's kind of depicted to be on par with characters like Quicksilver or the Flash. And he can also invoke the strength of the bear, which gives him superhuman strength, pretty much I'd say on the same level of He-Man, since it came from the same studio, Filmation. His partner and deputy is 3030, who is a robotic humanoid horse creature, because sometimes stuff got weird in the 80s. 3030 kind of fills in the role of Battle Cat and also Man-at-Arms a bit, as Bravestarr's not sidekick but partner and occasional mount, because that happens. It's not weird. Sometimes you just gotta ride your buddy like a horse, apparently. At least that's how it was in 1987. 3030 carries with him a large blunderbuss called Sarah Jane, which looks to be a devastating weapon that never really gets shot directly at an adversary like most of the 80s cartoons. It's often used to shoot a wall down to fall on somebody. Also featured in the show is Judge JB, a female judge, which was kind of progressive for the time. The main villain is Tex Hex, who is a purple outlaw, cowboy, demon, ghost creature. Again, sometimes the 80s got weird. And kind of rounding out the main cast was Fuzz. Fuzz was primarily the comic relief. He was a creature called a prairie people, And the prairie people mostly are used for physical comedy, are kind of this slapstick, goofy sidekicks that you see in most animated shows. But I think the writers of Bravestarr tried a little harder in some ways than other animated series, especially for the time. The prairie people are the indigenous inhabitants of a planet called New Texas, which is the setting for the show. Originally, in development, they wanted to call the planet New Cheyenne, but they found in their test groups that not enough people were familiar with the word Cheyenne or what it means to get the reference, so they ended up calling it New Texas. But anyway, these prairie people are an indigenous population of this planet, and outsiders end up coming, colonizing their planet, and many times robbing it of its natural resources, putting the prairie people in a position of secondary citizens, and are sometimes abused and are looked down on and not permitted into certain businesses. And I don't think any of this was an accident to write in, especially when your show features a native person as its main character. So props to the writers for that. And the writers of Bravestarr, I think, really enjoyed their job. And most of the episodes, it seems to me, are written in a way where you can tell they're not looking down on their target audience, which I feel like a lot of animated series, especially today, tend to do. One of the episodes that really sticks out in my mind is one called The Price. In the 80s, every program that had an audience of young people, whether it be an animated show or a live action show, a family comedy, all of them had to include a drug episode. And the obligatory drug episode for Bravestarr is called The Price. But it's a little different than really anything that you see from that time period targeted towards children, or anything today, I would wager. The A plot of the show is that these three kids get into using this illicit substance called spin, which is very heroin like, it seems to me. They don't show any injections or anything like that in the show, but the effects seem like they're based on heroin. And throughout the episode, the main character, Bravestarr, really doesn't have a lot to do with the A plot. He's busy going after somebody else. And by the time he's made aware of this kid, one of the three children becomes addicted to the substance. When the marshal's made aware of this, he goes to the treehouse where these kids would play. And this is where Bravestarr kind of differs from other shows of the time, because he doesn't make it in time. The episode ends with a child who looks to be, I'd guess, 10 to 12, somewhere in there, dying of an overdose. And I remember watching that as a kid and being blown away by kind of the tragedy of it. And because of that, it made it a lot more effective of an anti-drug episode than probably any other animated show that I had watched growing up. And so I think things like that, I think the writing of the show, the characters, um, really kind of separated it from anything else that was going on at the time. I know, especially for me, I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia, and you didn't see a lot of native representation on television. Um, you still don't really. You see some, and some done really well, like in programs like Longmire, which we are definitely doing an episode on at some point because that is the best show that's ever been on TV. And it's on Netflix. Go and watch it right now and come back in probably a couple of weeks and we'll talk about it. But when I was young, you didn't see representation like that of Native people on television. When you saw a Native in a cartoon, it was generally a very poor representation, to kind of say the least. Go back and watch some of the Looney Tunes that have anything to do with a Native person, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And especially as a hero, as the main character of a show, you still don't see that very often. You know, the whole idea of these kind of cartoons, these power fantasies, they're kind of called in some writings, is for the young person watching the show to get a sense of empowerment from these characters, to relate and visualize themselves as these characters, which is much harder to do when they're all blonde and blue-eyed and you're not. You're the opposite of that. Um, so when I was growing up, we didn't have blockbusters and things up in the mountains. We went to the local library and rented VHS tapes because I'm getting old, I guess. And I would always look for the Bravestarr cassettes. They had episodes that the library carried on cassette tape, and I must have wore those things out, man. I checked them out as often as I could and would watch them over and over again because it meant something to me to see somebody that I could relate to on TV. And more than that, see them as the hero, the lead character in the story. I was also into comic books, and you do see pretty good representation of Native peoples in comic books, especially Marvel, I think. But it might just be because I'm more familiar with Marvel comics than I am DC. And like in the X-Men, you have Forge, you have Warpath and Thunderbird. You have, the members of Alpha Flight. I mean, some of them are Native people, but very rarely are they the lead. They are not the primary focus. They're a secondary character at best. But in this show, in Bravestarr, he's the lead character. He's the hero. And even though some of the stuff is a little hokey, like, I'll be honest, you know, calling on the spirit of the bear to give you strength is hokey because of some of the other things that have kind of misrepresented the beliefs that is based on. But the way it's handled in this animated show, it's not done for laughs. It's not done making fun of aspects of native culture. It's done in a good way. That's what makes him a hero. That was what makes him powerful, is his culture and their beliefs. And even though they get him wrong, but I'll give him a little bit of a pass on that. There was not as much information readily available in the 80s as there is today. And, his mentor in the show, Bravestarr's mentor, is just called Shaman. And Shaman has this kind of voice. And it's a little stereotypical. But even with the Shaman character, it's a stereotype, but at least it's kind of done in a respectful way. So I was never personally bothered by it. I was just happy. I was just happy to see him on my TV screen. So, I don't want to go too much into kind of the history of Filmation and the acquisition of the company, kind of, leading to this and that, and mislaunch of the toy line. You can find that information elsewhere. I just kind of wanted to give my perspective on this program that actually had an influence on me. Which you may be able to tell, because I just realized as I sat down to film this that I was like, man, I stole a lot of my aesthetic from Marshall Bravestarr. But most of the old native guys that I knew growing up with dressed like this anyway, so it's not entirely Bravestarr's fault. If you're interested in the show, all of it is actually available on YouTube. There is a DVD set out of the entire series, all 65 episodes, and you can find the DVD of the movie, but I don't know how available those are anymore. I picked those up years ago. As soon as I saw that they were out on DVD, I was like, that's something I have to have. But if you're interested in it, check it. The whole series, the movie, everything is on YouTube, on the official Bravestarr YouTube page. Even if you don't want to take the time to sit down and watch the movie, which is kind of the introduction into the show, it introduces all the characters, sets the plot going forward. At least check out the theme song, because it is the best cheese 80s animated theme song. You have Bonanza references in there. You have narration going over everything you need to know for the show, because they assumed that children just I guess had never seen anything before, so they had to refresh you on all the pertinent information in the theme song, get that right out of the way, and get into, shooting people with laser shotguns. So at least check out the theme song on YouTube, if nothing else. And if you like that, give the show a chance. Filmation's properties right now are all owned by Universal Studios. And because there's such a nostalgia boom right now, maybe if enough of us get on there and start watching Bravestarr, we can get a Bravestarr reboot or a movie. If they can do Masters of the Universe, they can show Bravestarr some love. So make sure to check it out. Come back, let me know what you think in the comments. Videos have kind of slowed down a little bit. Right now the house is getting rewired, getting a whole new electrical system put in, and I've been helping out with that. We're getting put in by Print Up Construction. So if you're a local, look those guys up. He's doing a great job. But it has kind of taken up a lot of my time in the past few days. So as a result, videos have kind of slowed down. We will get to very shortly the Dungeons and Dragons videos and the comic book videos that we've already talked about. Those are on the way. I just haven't had time to get them to a point that I want them at yet. But be on the lookout for those. They should be coming soon. In the meantime, I had just wanted to sit down and talk about something I like that a lot of people have never even heard of or have forgotten about. So, thanks for coming, guys. Check out Bravestarr if you get the chance. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit the little bell if you want notifications for when a new video pops up. And until next time, happy trails, and thank you for watching Comics and Dragons.